Welcome everyone. Happy Friday. It's that time of the week and I'm very excited again to be back to you another week, another Friday for my new photography show or photography masterclass. That's what we're doing today. And every Friday at this time, so 8 a.m. Pacific, I'm on the East Coast, so it's 11 a.m. my time. Welcome everyone. I see a bunch of people in the chat already. I see a bunch of people actually in the chat over on YouTube. That won't really help you very much today because I'm not going to be looking at that chat. So if you are watching this over on YouTube, currently live, head over to behance.net/live. That's where the chat is that I'm going to be looking at today and answering questions from. You're welcome to hang out on YouTube, but you'll just be hanging out. You won't really get a chance to talk. So if you want to interact, head over to behance.net/live. All right, so with that said, we're going to do things a little slightly different today. It's a slight change of plans. Normally, I would just simply pick up where we left off last week, but between last week and today, we got some new updates in Lightroom. So I'm going to talk about those new updates first, especially for the people that already kind of know, they already got started with Lightroom. They don't really need to hang out for the whole hour. They can drop off if they want, or you can drop off if you want after I cover what's new. And then if you are hanging out for the part 2 of the class, that's what I'm going to be doing right after I talk about what's new. So just a quick recap. And for those of you who are also watching this on the replay, thanks for the replay numbers. We love those as well. I love those. And again, just thanks for so many people being here and watching live. All right. So last week, we did a very getting started with Lightroom to help people understand, there is a difference between Lightroom Classic, which you manage, meaning you are responsible for the storage of your photos, and Lightroom, which is just one word, Lightroom, but it's Lightroom in the cloud, that the images are synced and backed up. But we spent all of our time last week mostly on Lightroom Classic, understanding where the images are in the hard drive, understanding how Lightroom deals with them, and how you shouldn't deal with them once they're in Classic. You shouldn't be messing with them on the hard drive. Today, we're going to pick up, after I do the what's new, with just continuing from there. So we're going to talk about importing images now that you've got Lightroom set up the way it should be. I'm going to talk about maybe do a quick edit or two, and then we'll do some exporting if time permits. And if not, we'll just continue that next week. But we'll do as much as we can with what we have. All right, so let me just check one thing really quick here on the stream. Just want to make sure we're still good. We are still good. There we go. Okay. My Behance window was spinning for a second there. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and pop over to my desktop so we can cover the what's new, get that out of the way. And I'm going to be covering what's new between Classic and what's new between Lightroom and what's new on Lightroom on mobile. So we'll just get all the what's new stuff out of the way as much as I can today. And then we'll continue our topic that we worked on last week. And thank you, Robert, for saying part 1 was excellent. Alberto, thanks for being here, and people from Amsterdam, people from all over the world being here early in the morning. And in some cases, I saw someone that was like 5 a.m. their time, somewhere, and somebody's watching in the middle of the night. But thanks for watching, no matter where you are. And again, I really appreciate you supporting my new masterclass. So let's go ahead and switch over to my desktop here. I've got Lightroom Classic open. And also, by the way, I saw a couple comments, like 1 or 2 comments over after the stream was over, like, who's using Classic? And I'm thinking the vast majority of photographers are, because we're not thinking Classic in terms of Lightroom 6, like that. Yeah, that would be very old. Lightroom Classic is an evolution or an upgrade from all those previous standalone products. And it is still part of your membership and part of the Lightroom photography plan and all that. So don't think of it just because of the word Classic. It's something that outdated and is no longer available or any of that. So I think that's kind of where the confusion also came in last week. But anyway, jumping ahead to what's new. So we're going to start off in what's new in Lightroom Classic. Then we'll jump over to what's new in Lightroom. And again, if you hear me refer to it as Lightroom Cloud, it's just so I can tell the difference, or tell you the difference between Classic and Lightroom. All right. So let's start off with Classic. One of the first things that's new, and this will actually go a long way for people that import raw images. I'm going to go to my preferences, and there's a brand new presets area. And in that presets area, you now get to set up your default presets for all the raw images you import. Now, first and foremost, for those of you who are new, the whole point of a raw file is that it is unprocessed by the camera. Hey, Jason Levine, glad you're here, brother. It's my buddy Jason. He'll be doing a masterclass on audio and video later today. But anyway, your raw images are unprocessed by the camera. So therefore, they can come in looking kind of unprocessed. They can look dull. They can look underexposed. They can look exactly the way they were shot. And many times people are kind of disappointed when they see the raw file come in because they're used to that JPEG preview they saw in the back of their camera that looks so beautiful and vibrant and gorgeous. Well, you can get that. You would just set up a preset that kind of does some of that magic as the image is coming in. So the Adobe default is don't do anything, just bring in the raw file. You could also bring it in from the camera settings, so you could choose that. And now you could also choose a preset. So I could have a user preset called Make It Look Better. And so that preset might, it might do an auto tone. It might bump up the saturation. It might bump up the vibrance. It might, increase or decrease the exposure. It might do a lens correction. It might do all the things that I would normally do when I bring in an image. I can now have that done instantly when I import raw files. So if you are always doing the exact same things to your raw files when you bring them in, like for me, I'm doing a lens correction, I'm doing usually an auto tone, I'm doing all those things. Well, I can set up a preset that does all that, set it here once. From now on, whenever I bring in raw files, all that stuff gets applied automatically, and then I go tweak what I don't like about those things. That would be the easiest way to explain it. You can also use defaults for specific to camera models. So if I'm bringing in images from my iPhone, maybe I'm going to use a different preset. If I'm bringing in my iPhone 7 Plus, which I don't use anymore, but if I'm bringing in images from my new Nikon Z6 mirrorless camera, I could have settings set up specifically for that. So that even takes it to another level, because then I can say from this camera that always kind of shoots things, or this lens that always kind of shoots things a little dark, bump up the exposure by a quarter of a stop. I can do those kinds of things now upon import. So that is number one new feature. All these new camera defaults that you can do, raw defaults you can do based on changing the raw files as you import. And again, the reason we say raw versus JPEG is, and this will be the case for anything inside of Lightroom, all of this is non-destructive. So therefore, when you're bringing these things in and you're making these changes, if you don't like them after the fact, like maybe it did make an image too bright, just go change it on that image. You're never destroying the actual image. So I could apply that, make it look better upon import. And if it did it to an image that I don't like, I can always go back and change it. All right, I'm going to switch it back to the Adobe default for now. And let's go into the second new thing in Classic. And this will really be a big thing for people that work with big files in Photoshop. So let me bounce out of this for a second and show you what I'm talking about. Inside this particular folder, I have a Photoshop big file, PSB. That's what PSB stands for. Now, normally it's a .psd for document, Photoshop document. But if your document is over a certain size, it will, Adobe and the Photoshop team recommends saving it as a Photoshop large or Photoshop big file, which is a .psb. Prior to this update, Lightroom didn't support PSB files. So you could go in, bring in a raw file, take it over to Photoshop, start adding hundreds of layers to it to create your masterpiece, and then not be able to bring it back into Lightroom because it was a PSB file. Well, now that's no longer the case. I can drag this folder containing my PSB file over to Lightroom Classic in this case. And Lightroom Classic's import comes up. I see a nice preview. By the way, this is not my art. This is the wonderful artist Isabel LeMay. She loaned me this file back when I was showing Photoshop on the iPad for the first time. And so I would set my metadata to not be my copyright in this case. And then I would add that PSB file. And that PSB file comes in and works very quickly. And I can zoom in and see this beautiful, see this beautiful 3 gig artwork that she created with literally hundreds of layers. Everything you see in this image is on a different layer. And she just composites these amazing scenes. So PSB support now in Photoshop, now in Lightroom Classic. Next up, and this is kind of something that I'll just mention, I won't get a chance to show, but when you're in your develop module, of course, we always want things to be faster. So again, I'm on this 3 gigabyte file, more GPU accelerated editing. So when you're doing lens corrections and transform adjustments, expect them to be faster now, because the team continues to make progress on making things faster based on not just your CPU speed, but also your graphics card. Because a lot of people have beefy graphics cards, like fast graphics cards, that are just sitting there idle. They're not doing anything. They're not doing as much. So we are offloading some of that processing that the processor might be bogged down with over to the graphics card just to speed up everything. So more GPU editing, and specifically for lens correction and transform adjustments. And in that same vein, eGPU empowered enhanced details. So enhanced details is a way to make a image look better, sharper, especially if it has a lot of lines in it, basically a lot of like buildings and architecture and things like that. So now that's sped up if you have an eGPU, and an eGPU means external. So like, the new MacBook Pros can have an external GPU in an external case. And if you come back to your desktop and plug that in, everything gets faster. Now that gets faster in Lightroom as well. All right, the next thing I'm going to talk about, and this is something I use all the time. As a matter of fact, in this photography class, you're going to see me do it when we start doing live shoots. I use an external monitor. I'm plugged into one now, but I use an external monitor on my tethering setup when I'm shooting in studio, because I'm tethering to a MacBook Pro, which is great, 15, 16-inch screen, but I want a nice big screen, even turned into portrait mode, so I can see it full screen and make sure I got everything in focus, make sure it looks good. Well, you could always do a second display in Lightroom, but now you have way more control over, let's say you had 3 displays. Before, you couldn't really pick which one was going to be the second display. Now you can, through a whole new preference setup for that. So for example, if I go to my preferences here in Lightroom, there is a whole new display tab. And that display tab is currently showing me which displays I have connected. So we're looking at this little one. That's the one I'm streaming on right now. But this second one, which is my 27-inch iMac sitting off to the side over there, is now set up as my secondary window. And if you have 3 monitors, or like I said, I have one turned in the operating systems, turned physically and turned in the operating system. So it's really just it's a landscape monitor on its side, but makes it a nice portrait monitor. I could say, no, don't use the iMac, use that portrait monitor as my second display. So you get to control all of that in this new display tab. As a matter of fact, it won't really work well here because, like I said, I'm only streaming one of the monitors. But here's where you would go enable that once you have set it up as to which one you would show. You would go to the window menu, secondary display, and then you would just show it in whatever mode you want to show it in. So I normally show it in loop view. So whatever photo I have selected in the grid shows up on the second display, nice and big in loop view. And you can show it full screen or not. So if I show this now, it's just going to bring it up over here because of the way my streaming setup is set up. but this would normally be over here on the monitor you don't see, nice and big, so I can see that loop view. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that off because, like I said, we're only seeing one display here. But if I were on my regular tethering setup, that second display would now have that nice, it would have always had that nice loop view. So I'm seeing the images in both places. All right, so more control over that. And last but not least, and this is kind of a cool one because people are, especially new people, are confused about this. Let's go to my Page Arizona shots, for example. And one of the things that people will ask, we're going to do a whole section on this, a whole episode on this in one of the upcoming classes. But when people want to edit multiple photos at the same time, that's one of Lightroom's great strengths, is that you can select more than one photo and edit it. But people are confused because it's not set up that way by default. So there's just more, the new feature is that auto sync is improved to let you know when you are editing more than one photo at a time. So let me explain the process for those of you who are new. Let's say I want to edit this photo and this photo and this photo at the same time. Great. I head over to the Develop module, and of course it's going to bring up one at a time to develop. But whatever I apply to this photo, I want to apply to the other two. That's why I select them all. And you might be doing this on 2 photos. You might be doing it on 200 photos. So you might be doing it on 2,000 photos. That's why this is really an important workflow. But by default, people don't know how to do that because it's not on by default. So if I were to do this with the default setup, it would just edit the one that I have selected. The other 2 would not get edited even though they're selected. So it's already doing one of the new things. It's highlighting over here in the bottom right. Auto sync is turned on. Auto sync is turned off. So it's even glowing, letting me know when it's on. So this is the default where sync is the choice, meaning that you have to manually do it. If I turn that on now, it lights up, auto syncs on. So now whatever you do is going to happen to everything you've selected. So if I, for example, go to my basic panel and I were to decrease the exposure, watch what happens. Not only is it going to decrease the exposure on the one we were looking at, but watch what it pops up when I do this. Let go. Exposure updated for 3 images. It's just a quick, brief display to remind you that you've got multiple images selected and you're editing all 3 of them just in case you forgot, because I've done that by mistake sometimes. Sometimes I had I had all my images selected. I forgot. Oh, this one image is too dark. I brighten it or I crop it and all 300 images got cropped. No, I didn't mean to do that. So now it's reminding me, hey, you've got multiple images selected. Hey, you're on auto sync, letting me know that those things are happening. So those are the new things inside of Lightroom Classic. Let's switch gears and talk about the other Lightroom, the newer Lightroom, again, I'm going to call it Lightroom Cloud. But it's just officially called Lightroom. So I'm going to switch over to that Lightroom, or as my friend Kathy refers to it, rounded corner Lightroom versus the non-rounded corner Lightroom. So if we go to rounded corner Lightroom, this is the newer one. Let me see what's new over here. So one of the new things, and I'll point out if Classic already does this or doesn't. So for example, one of the new things is a feature that Classic already has, and that is when you do an export now, one of the new formats you can export in, if I choose export, you could always export as a JPEG, of course. You could always export as the original in a TIFF. Now, one of the new options is that you can export as DNG. So you can export out a new, you can export out a new RAW file, even though it might have originated as a JPEG. And again, I know that gets kind of confusing because DNG is really a container of whatever the information is, whatever the file is. So often, more often than not, it means that it's a RAW file, and that's the way it started. But DNG doesn't only refer to it's just a RAW file. It means it's a digital negative. So what's the benefit of doing this? When you export out an image as a DNG and you go edit it or re-import it, it's never changing the original, just like any other RAW file. So that would be the advantage. it's more of a non-destructive workflow. Okay, one of those things that I won't get a chance to show, I'll just mention it, is that now if you're on Android, meaning you're using Lightroom on your Android device, you can import presets and profiles from Google Drive. So if you sync your presets and profiles over to Google Drive, you fire up your Android device, you will be able to import them on your mobile device from your Google Drive without having to do that on the desktop first. All right, next up, of course, both versions support the newest cameras and newest lenses. We always do updates for those. All right, some of the other enhancements. So I'm going to now get into specific platforms. So now we're going to start off on the desktop. So one of the new enhancements on the desktop, and this is one that I love, I have another folder here called Space Station, and it's not really a space station, but it looks like one. I'm going to drag Space Station over, and now I get to drag it directly to an album. That's the new feature, is that before, when you did your import, you could only import to all photos. You had a choice to choose an album, but a lot of times I'd forget to do it and then have to move those images or copy those images into an album after the fact. Yeah, so anyway, I'm just reading a comment. So, same here. So let's drag that in. Now when I do my import, it brings up the same import dialog box, and it's already chosen that album to bring those photos into. So now if I were to import those photos, it would add them to the all photos like it always does, but it would automatically put them in the album as well. I'm not going to do that just yet. We're going to do a whole nother section on importing later. But just to let you know, that is a new feature, drag and drop right into an album so that when it imports, it goes right into that album, problem solved. And you can create the album first, of course, if you just want an empty album to drag them into before you do the drag. All right, next up, and this is kind of one that I'll have to find an example for. Let's do an HDR. There we go. So HDR, high dynamic range, is when you're going to select multiple exposures and combine them into one new exposure. And usually you're doing at least 3. It could be as little as 2. It could be as many as many. It could be more than 5 or 6 or 7. But usually you're doing at least 2 photos, and I on average do 3. So I do a overexposed, a underexposed, and a kind of in the middle. And that's just shooting bracketed on your camera. So you just switch your camera, your mirrorless, your DSLR, whatever your camera is, not an iPhone, to shoot brackets, and you can specify how many brackets to take, or how many images to take in that bracket, and how much exposure difference between them. So I usually do 3 exposures with 2 stops in between each one. All right, so for example, this, I'm just trying to decide which one we did. Okay, I think we did that one before. Well, we haven't done it before in this class. All right, let's select this one. Now, before I would have right-clicked, I would have done photo merge, I would have done HDR, or Control H, and that would bring up this dialog box. And the problem is it always brings up this dialog box no matter what. And by the way, what I'm about to show you does exist already in Classic. And you would then make all your setting changes and then click merge, and you get your new file. So this is combining all 3 exposures. So we get the detail in the stained glass windows. We get the detail in the shadow areas of this church ceiling. And we would click merge. The new feature is, I just got to get the keyboard shortcut right. If I just do Command Shift H, PC Control Shift H, get Command Shift H. I might have to do one first. Okay, what it's designed to do is after you do one, let me just go ahead and do it. All right, let's go ahead and do it. HDR merge. I canceled out of it, and that's why it's not letting me do it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and merge that. All right, now it's merging it, and it will make the new file. So what that will do going forward is it said, okay, I know what your settings are now. I know what you like. So if I select 3 more, and I do Command Shift H, It's not doing it. It should actually do the merge without the dialog box and create your next image without you having to bring up the dialog box. That's what the feature is, but maybe I'm using the wrong keys. Shift H. Had the wrong key written down. It's Control Shift H, just like it is on Classic. The website is wrong. It says Command. Anyway, so that will do it with the images selected that you don't get the dialog box, you just end up with the HDR. So Control Shift H or Control H for HDR with the dialog box, Control Shift H if you don't want to see the dialog box, you just want to do it. All right, and they need to correct the website because it says Command. All right, next up, and this is kind of a cool one. So both of those keyboard shortcut combinations work now, Classic and Lightroom rounded corners. And the next one is actually exclusive to the Lightroom Cloud ecosystem. And that is, in Lightroom, you have the ability to share an album. So I can say, hey, for this HDR album, I want to share it with other people. So I can either choose how I want this to work. Anyone can view it as long as they have the link. Or I can say invite only. Only the people's email addresses that I put in here will get the link or be able to look at it because they'll get an email and accept the link. But what was added to this recently was the ability to say that not only this person I'm inviting can view it, but they can also add photos to it. So, wait, hang on. Lynn's asking a question about the HDR. Will this work in Bridge? HDR works in Bridge because HDR has camera raw. I'm just, my hesitation is I don't think the keyboard shortcut would work in Bridge. You'd have to try it. But yeah, Bridge has camera raw built into it, which can do HDR, just like you can do HDR in camera raw in Photoshop. I just don't think it has the keyboard shortcut. So you'd have to try that part of it. But yeah, you can do HDR in Bridge. All right, next up. So the sharing an album and like I said, the can contribute is not new. That was there not long ago. That was there in the last couple updates. But what is new in the can contribute is that now when you share this out to somebody and say, hey, we both shot the same wedding or the same anniversary party or the whatever, you can import your photo, you can add your photos to this album. What's new about that is that they can, and here I'll just show it. It's easier to show it. So if I go to an album that has been shared with me, let's go here. For example, Victoria shared this album with me. So these are 3 images of Lisa. And I can see Victoria's little thumbnail there. She shared them with me, so I know where these images came from. And now I want to add my own images to her album. This is her album, not mine. But I have some images of Lisa that I want to add as well. So I'm going to go to my Lisa. Oh, hang on, I'm in the wrong spot. Let's go to Lisa. There we go. Here's the ones I took. And I want to add these 3 shots to it and having a little Photoshop fun there. I'm going to add these 3. And by the way, you notice that I flagged that one as a pick. I flagged this one as a pick with 5 stars, so forth and so on. So if I select these 3 and I right click and I choose add 3 photos to album, I get to add them to an album. Either I can add them to my albums, a different one. I can add them to ones that were shared with me that I am able to contribute to. So she not only shared the Lisa Hound album with me, but she also enabled my ability to contribute. So if I were to choose that, what's new is that prior to this update, my keywords would not be included. My star ratings would not be included. My GPS coordinates would not be included. Now I have a choice to include those things. So if I wanted her to have my keywords as well, if I wanted her to have my star ratings as well, if I wanted her to know where these photos were taken, if my camera had GPS enabled on it, I can add all of those things or not, your choice. And now I've contributed these 3 things to her album. So if we go back to that album that was shared with me, I don't know if it updates instantly or not. Let's go see. There they are. So, yep, she'll see where I'm seeing her little thumbnail. She'll see my little thumbnail on the bottom of her. And by the way, let's say she shared this to 5 people. We would each see each other's thumbnails so we know who contributed which photos. The other thing that's new in this is that you now have the ability to export photos that were contributed by others. Before, you couldn't do that. You can export, wait, hold on. You can export photos that have been contributed by others and shared albums. This can only be done if the album owner has provided download access to the contributor. So there's a caveat. If the person didn't turn on the ability to download the pictures, then you can't. But if they did, which depending on the situation, they will or they won't, you would be able to export them out as well. All right. Next up, speaking of keywords, let's go back to mine. I keep scrolling the wrong thing. There we go. Let's go back to mine. And let's say I want to add a keyword to this photo. I want to add the keyword puppy to it. So if I go all the way down here to the bottom right of Lightroom Cloud, there's the keywords, or hit the letter K. That'll bring up the keyword window. You can see that I've already added 3 keywords to this photo manually. One of the new features, and this is also in Classic, this also works the same way, is that it has autocomplete. Because without autocomplete, you could start typing and type too many P's or too many Y's or make a typo of some kind. And now you got a new keyword that's wrong. So when I start typing puppy, it autocompletes it. So that way, I'm using a consistent keyword that I've used in the past, so there won't be an error, have 3 different versions of a keyword because I mistyped it 2 other times. And again, Classic works the same way. All right, next, let's jump over to mobile, and then we'll wrap this up. I'm just making sure I'm not missing anything. Yep. Okay, we'll pop over to mobile. Let me get my iPad over here. Let's fire this up. All right, and let me now make it so you can see it. All right, there's my iPad, and I'm just going to hide the other stuff in the background for a minute. Let's just, never mind, that will hide other things I don't want to hide. Okay, so just show you the iPad here, and on the iPad, I've got Lightroom in my Adobe folder, of course, so I can just go ahead and switch over to Lightroom. And that's showing the albums that I have, that last album I was on. So what's new is that Lightroom on the iPad supports an iPad OS feature called Split View. So Split View has been part of iPad for a while now, but the applications have to take advantage of it. So for example, if I bring up the dock and I say, oh, there's Safari. I kind of want to look at some instructions or look at whatever website while I'm working on this photo. Maybe while I'm reading a tutorial on how to do something. I kind of want to put them side by side so I don't have to keep switching back and forth. Now if I tap and hold on that app and bring that app up, and I can even dock it to the side, I get the split view kind of look there, and I can then say, yeah, let's go into that website. And now I'm looking at that website with Lightroom on the left side and Safari or whatever app supports split view on the right side. It doesn't have to be a web browser, it could be anything. I can also change the size ratio, make Lightroom a little bigger, or make the web browser a little bigger. And just, again, support for split view is now new. And if you get tired of looking at both windows side by side, meaning I looked over and I saw what I needed to see on the website, I don't need to see the website anymore. I can either just expand the window all the way out so that browser goes away, and now I'm back to looking at just Lightroom. All right, and that's the new feature on iPad Split View. A couple of quick other things. Duplicate photos are identified faster during import. So it took a minute or two for it to figure out which images were already imported. Now it doesn't. And experience smoother import from photos on an SD card. So if you're importing your photos from an SD card on Lightroom on your iPad or iOS device, you will get that. So on Android, we already talked about one of the features, and that was the Google Drive presets. The other one is just on when you're looking at the Learn content, which is that the home screen at the upper left corner there. When you're looking at the Learn content and you anywhere during the process where you're watching someone edit a photo, you can tap and hold to see the before and after. So that is a Learn content feature. That's it. Okay. That's it. Those are the features that are new in the February updates of Lightroom. Those are the main ones. There's some other little enhancements, but those are the main ones I wanted to cover today. So I'm going to quit out of this. I'm going to quit out of Lightroom Cloud. I'm going to go back to Lightroom Classic, and we're going to now continue the Masterclass. So we're going to pick up where we left off last week. So this is that intermission point for those of you who came just to see what's new. I'm done with that part now. Now we're going to continue with the getting started with Lightroom part that I started last Friday. So you can always go back and watch that replay as well. And if you want to stick around, great. If you drop off, I understand that you came just to look at the new features. All right. I think I caught up on the questions. I haven't seen anything new. Other than hello, thanks for doing the masterclass, and hello, Mexico City. All right, cool. Hello, lots of hellos. And Lynn Smith, you're welcome. All right, so with that said, continuing now with the masterclass on getting started with Lightroom Classic. So when I last left you in the last episode, we were showing how to manage the photos, where they exist on the hard drive, so forth and so on. And we left it with this. We were in this particular catalog. We had imported our family, friends, landscape, portraits, travel, and work photos. I'm looking at them on the left-hand side. There's a new photo I just imported in a new folder called Huge Freaking Photoshop Files. That photo, why am I not able to click on that? Oh, what am I doing here? Did my Lightroom do something weird there? Hang on, it usually means there's a window open somewhere. Hold on, delete. Or maybe I want to quit out of this. I'm going to just relaunch that. Something was acting funky there. Just make sure we can do this. All right, there we go. And now, so we're going to do exactly what I talked about before. I want to manage this new photo. This new photo really doesn't belong in this catalog because it's not my work. But let's say it was my work. And let's say that I want to now manage where this photo is because it's not in the right spot. Remember, we made a folder called My Photos and Videos, and it has all these things in it. And now we have this random folder called Huge Freaking Photoshop Files that I used in the demo earlier. And it doesn't belong there. It doesn't belong there. It's not the right name. It's a composite. Maybe it's client work, whatever it is. It needs to be in a better spot. And it's now time to think about that and how to manage that in Lightroom. So if you do end up importing things from the wrong place, and you now want to fix the mess because, oh no, that's not organized, it's not in the right place. I saw lots of people asking questions last week. Well, what if I want to clean up my mess that I've already made? Can I do that in Lightroom, or do I have to start over? And the answer is yes and yes. You don't have to start over, you can. And yes, you can fix it in Lightroom. It's just whichever one you think is easier. So if it's a minor mess, meaning it won't take you too long to just kind of rearrange things the way they should be, then just rearrange the catalog you already have. If it's a major mess, lots of missing photos, lots of things that are just wrong, so forth and so on, then you might want to start a new catalog and import the things that matter from the messed up catalog and then start from there. So I'm going to fix this mess right now. So first and foremost, maybe we need a new category because this is really not my photo. It's technically client work or contractor work. So I'm going to rename this folder first and foremost because huge freaking Photoshop files was just the name I gave it for a demo. So I'm going to right click on this folder. I'm going to choose rename. And instead of huge freaking Photoshop files, I'm going to call it client work. All right. So now it's got a better name. Cool. Still in the wrong spot. And by the way, if it were client work, I really don't want just random photos in the client work folder. I want the names of the clients in the client work folder. So I need a subfolder. I need a folder in client work for this particular artist. So to do that, I'm going to add subfolder. So I'm on the folders area up here at the top, and I'm going to click add subfolder, which means it will add it for the folder that I already have selected. Add subfolder and include the selected photo, which is great. Her name is, I'm bad with names, spellings. I think it's Isabel. I'm just going to go with that. It's LeMay. I can't remember if it's that or not, but Isabel, if you're watching, I'm screwing up your name. I know I am. I'll go fix it with the right name after the fact when I go look it up. But it's something like that. But anyway, I know it starts with a Y. All right, and it's just, I don't remember the way she spells it. But I'm going to go ahead and click create because I can always change it. So now if I twirl that down, her image is in her folder with the bad spelling, but we'll fix that, when we know the right spelling. And client work is still not in the right spot. So now the only thing I have to do is move client work to my files and folders. That's it. I fixed everything in Lightroom. Everything is in the right spot. I did not go to the Finder. I did not work behind Lightroom's back. I did not cause a problem. I just managed the operating system right here inside of Lightroom Classic. And that's what this whole folders tab is. You are managing your operating system. You're managing your file storage right here inside of Lightroom. So now if I were to say, show me this in the Finder, show me where this is in the operating system, there it is, along with all my other folders. And it's in the right spot. It's in my files and folders. And if I were to twirl this down, it will show me that that is the folder that I created. If I were to twirl that down, it shows me the PSB file that I created. So it's showing me everything that I did inside of Lightroom without me having to come to the Finder and do it or the Windows Explorer and do it and messing things up. It's just easier to do it right there in Lightroom. Okay, so now that I've drilled that into your heads and we fixed our issue there, we can twirl that up, and now we're going to talk about how to import the right way. So question someone's asking, I'm always missing the start time. When are these master classes? They are, well, mine is at 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. You would need to do the time zone conversion for wherever you live. So 8 a.m. Pacific time is the start time for my masterclass every Friday. All right, next up. So let's talk about importing. So now we got our catalog situated. We got everything organized. Now it's time to learn the proper way to do an import going forward so you don't mess up anymore. Because starting with a clean desk or empty drawers in your desk is great, but then if you just start opening drawers from now on and throwing things in them random willy-nilly, you're going to end up with a mess again. So the right way, or the best way, is to learn the right way to import so that you maintain what you've been doing. All right, so where most of you will end up is with one of these. It's a memory card. I have a memory card with some images ready to go that I shot yesterday at an event. And what I'm going to do is, Fred's asking me a technical question. Are you using Dropbox for your catalog? Absolutely. We're going to get to a whole episode on that. That's how I manage my Lightroom Classic catalog so that I can open it up on multiple computers, one at a time, of course. But that's where I store it. It gets synced, backed up, so forth and so on. All right, but anyway, back to this. So this is where many of you will end up. And this is where many of you have to make a decision as to how you want to do your import. There's two ways to do this from one of these. Once you put that card in your card reader and it shows up in your computer, well, here, if I got Lightroom open, I'm going to go ahead and push it in. And in a second or two, once it mounts, Lightroom does this. Cool. If Lightroom's already open, it will say, oh, you just imported you inserted a memory card. You've got some images on it. I'm ready to go to work. And keep in mind where those images are right now. They're on a physical piece of media. They're on this physical piece of media called Nikon Z6. And where do I need them to be? I need them to be in that folder called My Photos and Videos, and in a, wherever they belong in that folder. Maybe client work, because this was actually a shoot for a partner. But anyway, now that I've got these photos ready to import from yesterday, or yesterday evening's event, I have to decide how to manage this dialog box. So this is the first way. The first way is this works from left, middle, right. So notice the arrows are even pointing in the direction of this workflow. It's left to right. So on the left side of this window is where the images are coming from. We already know where they're coming from. They're coming from the memory card I just put in. It's already selected. It's already showing me the images. That part's taken care of, done. The middle part is the how. How do you want to import these images? So the left part is the from, the middle part is the how, the right part is going to be where. So the middle part is how. You have two choices when you're working with removable media, a memory card or a camera you plugged in. Copy or copy as DNG. Now that we could spend a whole episode just on DNG, but I'm just going to give you this in a nutshell for now because we only have a few minutes left in this class. Copy as DNG is my default choice. That's the one I use. And what that means is that it will take the raw files that are proprietary, like my shoot with a Nikon, so mine are .nef files. If you shot with a Canon, they might be .cr2 files. If you shot with a Sony, they might be .a something, I don't remember. They might be whatever files. They're whatever format your camera manufacturer puts them in. So DNG is Adobe's proposed non-proprietary standard that anyone can adopt and use either internally in their cameras or their software. So here's some food for thought. JPEG has been around for many years. And the one thing you never heard a headline saying, what if JPEG goes out of business? Because there's no such thing. There's no JPEG company. It's a file format. Joint Photographic Experts Group is what it means. But it's a file format. It's a standard. And companies will come and go. Cameras will come and go. Things will come and go. Thanks for the spelling, by the way. And JPEG will be around because it's a standard. Anyone can write to it. All camera manufacturers write to it. All software can read it. All OSs can read it. It's a standard. But if a camera manufacturer goes away, and most likely then the support for that format would go away, then you might be stuck with images one day you can't open. And that's what DNG does for raw files, just like JPEG does for non-raw files. So just in a nutshell, I convert my images upon import from whatever format they're in, from the camera to DNG. So I know I'll always be able to open them. Even if Adobe went out of business, DNG would still be around. If Nikon went out of business, DNG would still be around. If Canon went out of business, DNG would still be around. So that's my bit on that. If you don't care about that, just do copy. That way it'll copy the actual NEF files or whatever your camera is directly. So first and foremost, copy. Next up, if you've already imported from this card, it will default to new, meaning just show me the ones I haven't imported. Or you could say, show me all images, even if I've imported some from this card or not. So new is going to be the best choice. Then, of course, it's going to let you choose which ones you want to import. So if you saw one that was a mistake, out of focus, bad, underexposed, you were walking, it was a picture of the ground, you just didn't want an image, no sense wasting time importing it. So I can just uncheck the box of the ones I said, nope, I already know that's a bad one. Don't even waste my time bringing it in. All right, so this is the whole section of letting me see them. You can look at an image bigger. So if you say, oh, I can't tell if that one's in focus or not. Oh, yeah, it is. It's crooked. It needs some work, but it's in focus. I'll use it. So you can look at them in loop view. You can uncheck all the photos and then just check specific ones because maybe you only need a couple right now. You can check all. You can. So this is the which ones and how. Now the question is where to put them. Where do you want them on whatever drive you want to put them on? So I want them on my hard drive, but I want them in the same folder that the other images are going to be in. So let's get to that first. I'm going to go to my hard disk. I'm going to go to, I can't remember where that folder is actually. I think it's in my demo files. It's in my Lightroom Classic. I just want to make sure I know where it is. Yeah, okay. So it's there. So I'm going to go into users, Terry White. Yep. I'm going to go into my hang on again. Let me just see where that is. It's in Dropbox. Okay. Gonna go to Dropbox. Gonna go to demo files. Gonna go to, this is a one-time thing, by the way, because it'll remember it from now on. I'm gonna go to Lightroom Classic, or no, CC demo files, and then Lightroom Classic. And then my photos and videos, and inside of client work. And inside of client work, I can then say either put them in the Isabel LeMay folder that I need to fix the spelling on, or make a new folder, insert into a subfolder that I will create right now. And I'm going to create that folder and call it I forget. Okay, we'll just call it last night. Let's give it a real client name. Let's call it Instacart. All right, so that's the client name. That's where it's going to go. All right, now we kind of told it where, but we skipped some of this stuff up here. So let's go back up here where we need to choose some things. So first and foremost, there is the preview tax, and I only have a couple minutes left, so let's do this. The preview tax is something you're going to pay. It just depends on when you want to pay it. You're going to pay it. It's a matter of when, not if. Meaning, do I want to build big previews now so that when I click on an image, it loads instantly full screen? Or maybe I won't click on an image, all the images. So why build them up front? So I usually do minimal up front, or you could go all the way to 1-to-1 up front. So I do minimal, and then that way it'll build them upon clicking on the image. So it might be at a slight delay the first time you click on each image to go into loop view, but it will save me the time upon import. Build smart previews. I always do this because this will let me work on these images even if I take the laptop away and the images are stored on my hard drives at home. I'll still have the smart previews to work on. Of course, don't bring in duplicates. You get a one-time make a copy. Make a backup copy of this one time just in case you want to make a copy of the card. I usually don't do that, but a lot of people do. It's a one-time copy. And then last but not least, you could add them to a collection. And actually, that's not last but not least. Last but not least is your metadata preset. So I created one called Terry White Photography ATL. And a metadata preset is just this. It is your info. So it's, or maybe I didn't create this one. Hang on, I'll switch to, oh, that's why it's because I'm custom. There we go. It's who you are, your copyright, your photography email address, your your email address, your photography website, so forth and so on. So all of the stuff about you would go in there and get embedded into the copyright info or the metadata of each of the photos that you import. All right, so now that I'm ready to do all of that, I just click import and it will begin the importing. So it made my new album or collection. It's importing them, copying them from the card. Once they're done copying, it will convert them into DNG and stick them all in that album. So that's importing into Classic. That's how it works. Now they're done importing. The card's been ejected. Now these operations happening in the background are whatever things I asked it to do in that dialog box. So I asked it to convert to DNG and to make smart previews. Those are the two operations happening in the background now. When I say in the background, that means I can continue working right now with the images that have come in, because it will just keep doing that work behind the scenes. And that's why these are just letting you know something's going on, but it's not stopping you from working. All right, and unfortunately, we're out of time. That's all we're going to get a chance to do today. I know it was kind of a lot, but hopefully you got something out of it. And we'll pick up where we left off right now, because we got some images we need to edit. We need to talk about exporting. We need to talk about how to import into Lightroom Cloud, all of the above on the next episode. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for watching today. And again, hopefully you got something out of working with Lightroom Classic. This is the one I use all the time. If you like Lightroom Cloud, that's a great one too. We'll be talking about more on that a little bit later. So with that said, hopefully I got everything covered that you guys wanted to see today. I know there's always more, but I think you guys got something out of this. I'm looking at the comments here. Happy Valentine's Day to you as well. And thanks, Mark Heaps, for being in. And bye, everybody. Have a good one. Gotta go.